It's wonderful to showcase Victorian talent right here in this Government House ballroom. Circus Oz, of course, was born in Victoria, so to have them performing here was an absolute treat.
The Governor asked Circus Oz if we had anything that we could bring to activate the ballroom and to get some kids into the house.
Oh, I suppose the inner child in all of us loves circus, but it's more what Circus Oz is able to do, because they do so much work with children and with children who might not always have opportunities, and that's something that's very dear to me.
It is a bit like a basketball hall. I mean, really, basketball stadium. It's just a lot fancier. There's a lot of gold in that roof. So today was really fun. We did a workshop with about 40 kids from the Collingwood English Language School. We taught them a balance that they then performed in the show in front of the Governor, and then they had afternoon tea with the Governor. It was really great.
The Government House is like a castle. It's very big.
If we can say to little ones, particularly these newly arrived ones, you're welcome, this is the home of the head of state, or representing the head of state. I don't know if they fully understand that concept yet, but they will understand the sense of welcome and of being somewhere very special to Victoria.
Trobe came to Victoria in 1839 with Sophie and their 2 daughters and their prefabricated house. But Charles was really a visionary, and he knew that eventually a larger government house would be needed. And so in 1841 he set aside a huge allotment of land along the Yarra River. It would take over 30 years for Government House to eventually be built on this spot, and they would come up with this incredibly stunning building. I think it was really Charles La Trobe's vision that set the stage for what later was going to happen.
It ended up being designed by the chief architect of the Victorian Public Works. Government House is the biggest house in Australia still. And it's really beautifully proportioned. There's wings which all meet at a very beautifully proportioned tower. The building's considered aesthetically beautiful, it's considered architecturally important, and then obviously it has great historical merit for what it is, what it does. When the ballroom was measured, it was found to be a little bit bigger than the one at Buckingham Palace. And there is this myth that there was a message that came from Queen Victoria to just cut it down a little bit so it actually didn't compete. And the story goes that the message didn't get here in time and that the ballroom was built the way it was intended from day one. We were building a bit of a palace.
It's seen some magnificent events. When the house was opened in 1876, a ball was held for 1,400 people.
So we read of these magnificent balls with the latest Paris fashion being paraded by the women, and, for example, gold dust sprinkled in their hair.
And it has seen a lot of balls over the years, but its modern use is really quite different. I'm the patron of Red Cross, and the Red Cross performed very important service here, packing boxes and equipment and stores for the fighting men and women in the First War. And it was my delight to host a blood donor day here in the ballroom last year. We had 100 people turned up to donate blood, and they had the pleasure, if that's the right word, of giving their blood whilst looking at this magnificent ceiling.
So there's been a beautiful music program run at Government House here for some time, but it was usually chamber music. One of the joys for me has been being able to expand that well-established program so that we've had a diverse range of art forms and performance on show. We've had a rock concert for young teenagers to get them interested in the work of the Governor, and so that they understand the work that we do, and again so that they know that this big building in the centre of Melbourne is somewhere welcoming for them.
We've also had a wonderful function here to celebrate Ida Hobbit Day, as we call it, and that was very special. There were about 1,000 people that came into the house. Many were emotional. It was, as they said, the first time that their community had been officially invited into a government house anywhere in Australia, and we were delighted that we could do that.
You're welcome tonight, and marking International Day against homophobia, biphobia, intersex and transphobia is a strong and indeed very meaningful stance, and a strong statement of unconditional acceptance, support and celebration in our community. It's always an honour to be the Commissioner for Gender and Sexuality, but never more so than tonight. And on behalf of the LGBTIQ+ people here, can I warmly thank you and acknowledge your welcome to Government House.
I think these are good examples of the openness and inclusiveness which we want the House to stand for.
So I talk a lot about diversity. It's very dear to me. It's as dear to me in the art that we choose in this house as it is in everything that we do.
The National Gallery of Victoria has always lent major artworks to Government House. It's been something that's been in our charter really for over a century. So you'll find that our works, many of them have happily lived here almost their entire lives.
Well, in choosing the art here, it's been important to me to show our wonderful creative state and the talent, because that's actually a very important part of our economy in Victoria. And if we can't showcase that well in this house, where can we showcase it well?
So we rotate works constantly at Government House. In fact, we've never been more active in the way that we rotate work, because we like to keep it fresh and dynamic, and we also want to give a lot of opportunities to artists.
So in addition to the beautiful Streetons and McCubbins and magnificent older works, we now have very contemporary works, including quite gritty works on show, because we're showing Victorian art through the ages.
We've had an overwhelmingly positive response to the range of artworks that we've been showing in this room and in a range of other rooms, and that's heartening for us, but also of course for the artist.
I want young artists, I want Indigenous artists. I want our art, like everything else in this house, to represent Victoria thoroughly.
A great piece of architecture takes all of the things it needs to do, makes it work beautifully on the inside, and then actually gives it an equally important physical presence in the place where it sits. It's probably now one of Melbourne's best loved buildings.